Hi, and welcome back to Point to Point. If you caught my last bike lane video, the one about whether Chicago had taken bike lane improvements too far, you may have noticed the discussion in the comments got a little heated. The topic stirred up a lot of emotions, both from drivers who thought bike infrastructure was a waste of taxpayer money, and from bike riders who felt like the improvements were too watered down to make a difference. Well, in the spirit of finding common ground, I have a topic today that should be without controversy. I think so. I hope so. Fingers crossed. I mentioned in that last video that drivers generally have no issue with fully dedicated bike infrastructure. Uninterrupted lakefront paths that rarely intersect with roads, that's good for everyone. Trails along rivers and through parks, yep, that works too. Underpasses, overpasses, check and check. Same lack of controversy exists with most train infrastructure, as trains fly overhead or tunnel underneath streets. Most of the time, anyway. Now, what if you combine the best of bike infrastructure and the best of train infrastructure? That would have to be pretty incredible, right? Do you see where I'm going with this? That's right, rail trails. But I'm not talking about just any ordinary rail trail through the woods with at-grade crossings, stop signs, and traffic nearby. That might cause some controversy. Don't get me wrong. Those are still high-quality places to bike and run and walk. But what I'm talking about is a premier rail trail in a dense city environment, floating above vehicle traffic with nothing to interrupt your momentum or your peaceful reverie. I'm talking about Chicago's 606 Trail. Carving its way through Chicago's northwest side, the 606, previously known as the Bloomingdale Trail, really is cycling nirvana. Nearly 3 miles end-to-end, it's reminiscent of New York's High Line, but it's twice as long, serving as not only an urban respite, but also a fitness destination and a bike transportation artery. Planned as a freight line to help rebuild Chicago after the fire of 1871, the first trains here ran at grade. Due to safety concerns, the line was elevated in the 1910s and continued to serve the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad for most of the next century, supporting both freight and passenger trains. As the neighborhood changed from industrial to largely residential, though, freight traffic slowed over time and finally ended in 2001. For several years, it sat abandoned. Eventually, city leaders began to reimagine how this abandoned land could be used. It took more than a decade of hard work, but in 2015, the 2.7-mile trail finally opened. You need to experience it for yourself if you haven't already. But let me just say, this is a fantastic piece of bike infrastructure. Paths enter and exit the trail every quarter to half mile, making access really easy. At several access points, you'll find neighborhood parks below, making the trail a great destination for families. And because the trail cuts right through vibrant Chicago neighborhoods, you're never far from restaurants and shopping. Many of the entrance ramps are interesting in their own right, like this one up from Milwaukee. Each section is different, but all have abundant flowers, bushes, and trees, with the foliage generally walking that fine line of feeling wild and somewhat unplanned, without being totally overgrown. Remnants of old rail bridges and concrete embankments serve as a reminder of the history here. Although not all the trains are gone, and not all of the bridges are old. Some were newly installed, like this one over Milwaukee Avenue. It's sort of the main icon of the trail, with the CTA Blue Line running overhead. There are multiple areas along the trail for simply sitting and relaxing, catching up with friends, or eating a quick snack. My favorite part, though, might be this wooded section toward the east end. For a moment, I forgot I was still in the city. It really is 3 miles of heaven, not just for bikes, but for runners, walkers, and anyone who wants a little break from city streets. Think I maybe cherry-picked some of the most appealing sections of the path? Well, I didn't, and if you want proof, here's a sped-up clip of the full length of the trail, from west to east. To borrow a line from Jay Bush, roll that beautiful bike footage. And this gives you a sense of what the complete trail is like, even at this high speed. If you'd like to see me post the full length of the trail at normal speed in a separate video, let me know in the comments. I'll let the rest of this clip speak for itself, but if you want to get back to the commentary, jump forward about a minute and a half. So I've said a lot of positive things about the 606. It's a great use of what was an abandoned rail line. Is there possibly anything here that could be controversial? No, not that. I mean, are there any reasonable critiques of this trail? The first thing that occurred to me is that after riding on the 606, biking on regular streets feels less pleasant. Once you've ridden up above the fray, it's hard to accept being down in the streets again. You want to be back up in that elevated wonderland. That's not really a critique of the trail itself, though. Is being too popular a fair criticism? It can get pretty crowded. My full-length clip was on a quiet Sunday evening, but weeknights and weekend mornings and afternoons can be a lot busier. Here's some footage from a busier Saturday morning. There are a lot of runners and walkers, far outnumbering bikers, so anyone on a bike needs to manage expectations and slow down, especially for larger groups. No training for a time trial on Saturday morning. There is an argument to be made that this is sort of a trail to nowhere. At both ends, the trail just abruptly comes to a halt, and it doesn't really connect with anything. The trail is bracketed on the west by rail lines still being used, and on the east it runs up against the highway, more rail lines, and a river. There's actually a plan to thread the needle and take the eastern end across Ashland, under the highway, and over the freight tracks and river. It's no small task, and given the complexity, work is not exactly full steam ahead. Once it's complete in a couple years, trail users will be able to connect to the Dickens Greenway all the way to the lake. Check out my video on that project. In the meantime, the only way to connect east is under the expressway at Cortland. Fun. So none of that is particularly controversial, you say. Is there anything else? Okay, one more thought. As much as I like converting old rail lines to new bike trails, it hurts to have those two right-of-way uses be mutually exclusive. Imagine light rail using this corridor, joining a Circle Line or North-South BRT that connects Chicago's current transit lines, but outside the loop. Could the right-of-way have been expanded to support bikes, pedestrians, and light rail? When you look at some of the photos before construction and before all the vegetation grew in, it's a pretty wide area. Don't get me wrong, I love this trail, and I'm going to keep riding on it even if it's somewhat out of the way for me. I just wonder if the dream could have been a little bigger, a little bolder, a little better for all of Chicago. What's your opinion on the 606, or rail trails generally? Is this where you find your bike riding or running nirvana, or do you think city planners could be doing more with old rail lines? Let me know in the comments, and if you're up for it, subscribe to my channel for more future videos like this one. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.